Confederation College and Lakehead University weighed in on the government's new cap on international students. Good evening and thank you for joining us. LU and Confederation College officials are expressing serious concerns about Monday's announcement from Ottawa.
The Trudeau government announced that a cap will be placed on foreign student visas, meaning Ontario will have to cut its intake in half for at least the next 2 years. Josh Morano reports.
Post-secondary institutions around the province are being forced to deal with a serious obstacle put before them by the federal government. For the next 2 years, international student visas will be reduced by 50%, which Ottawa says is necessary to combat housing concerns across the province.
We've got 2 years to actually get the ship in order. It's a bit of a mess.
Post-secondary institutions in Thunder Bay will take a big hit, as the current foreign student enrollment at Lakehead University is around 1,900 students. James Aldridge is the Vice Provost International at the university, and he says the school is concerned about what this could mean down the road.
Right now, unfortunately, it seems like there's more questions than there are answers across the sector. But it will definitely affect the financial health of the sector at a time when a tuition freeze and then a declining real per-student operating grants to the institutions are already placing an enormous pressure on Ontario universities like Lakehead.
Confederation College is another institution that will feel the repercussions of the move. Right now, more than 50% of those enrolled at the college are international students, and while those who are already there won't be affected by the visa cap, school president Kathleen Lynch says they depend on their international students wanting to come to Canada for their education.
We were a bit surprised that it was as drastic as it was, considering that we need international students here in Northwestern Ontario. Our population's declining. They don't displace any domestic student, and it's great for us. It's a win-win because it allows us to offer the breadth of programming that we do.
Lynch adds that change will not only affect the schools, but will have an economic impact on the community and businesses in Northwestern Ontario as a whole.
We have a shortage of labor in Northwestern Ontario, so the students bring that labor here. They want to stay and work here. So cutting off that supply is really going to hurt Northwestern Ontario too. So we're concerned about that, and we're going to be working closely with all of our key partners to see how we can mitigate that to the best of our ability.
Josh Morano, TBT News.
Federal Indigenous Services Minister Patty Hajdu attended an emergency meeting with Anishinaabe Nation in Ottawa this afternoon to talk about what's described as a suicide crisis in First Nation communities. NAN Grand Chief Alvin Fiddler invited Hajdu and several other federal and provincial ministers to discuss next steps and develop potential solutions. In a post to Facebook, Fiddler wrote that since he started in the role 4 months ago, he's, quote, attended more funerals, delivered more eulogies, and hugged more grieving mothers than he can count. TBT News spoke to Hajdu before the meeting. She says the long-lasting effects of colonization, intergenerational trauma, and systemic racism are major contributors to the crisis. And despite the creation of various mental health outlets, including NAN's Choose Life program, Hajdu notes there's still a huge need for intervention and prevention.
We're still seeing young people feel so hopeless that they choose suicide instead of life. And I'm very pleased that 3 of my federal counterparts will be at the meeting. The Minister of Health, the Minister of Mental Health and Addictions, and the Minister of Crown Indigenous Relations are all going to be attending that meeting and listening to the perspectives of NAN leaders and thinking through how we best move forward together.
Fiddler wasn't available for an interview before the emergency meeting this afternoon. Ontario Solicitor General Michael Kersner and Indigenous Services Minister Greg Rickford were among 4 provincial ministers invited, but a NAN spokesperson says none of them attended the meeting.
Thunder Bay residents have the chance to share their thoughts and ask questions about the new proposed indoor turf facility as the city is hosting a public open house at the community auditorium at this hour. Attendees can take a look at new images of the floor plan and the design of the facility and find out more about the planned site next to the auditorium. Residents also have the chance to answer a survey at the open house or online to provide additional feedback. City Engineering and Operations Director Kayla Dixon says after receiving input from the public, the next step is to bring a report back to Council in March.
That report back is to include a business case, so looking at the operating costs of the facility for both of those 2 options, and also do the stakeholder engagement, so see the public supports this and what their comments are around the site location and the site. And we also will be going back to provide a recommendation on the project delivery model.
The open house will continue tonight until 7, but the survey will be up online for another 3 weeks.
City Council was presented with Thunder Bay's long-term financial overview last night.
While there was a focus on the proposed tax levy hike of 6.1% or 5.5% after growth, the infrastructure gap, city debt, and new construction were all highlighted as well. Vasilios Bellows has the details.
It's an outline of Thunder Bay's finances this year and beyond. As part of the budget process, administration presented the annual long-term financial overview to council on Tuesday night. It outlined the 2024 budget, coming with it a proposed 6.1% tax levy hike before growth. It equates to paying $201 more a year for a median assessed value single-family detached home. City staff compared Thunder Bay's proposed tax hike to 15 other unnamed municipalities, finding it was below the average.
Good information, but you can't rely on that completely.
City Treasurer Carrie Grieve says these comparisons can be helpful, but stresses it's important to recognize the uniqueness of municipalities.
Each municipality has the ability to keep their levies low for several years and then play catch up in 1 year, as some municipalities have.
As for the outstanding debenture balance, it's estimated at just over $200 million. Some of Thunder Bay's largest special debentures include nearly $21 million for the indoor turf facility and more than $15 million for Victoriaville.
People default. More debt is a bad thing.
City Manager Norm Gale brought attention to Thunder Bay's debt and says there's times it's beneficial to the municipality.
Enables us to spread the cost over years and generations so that the actual users of those facilities, those that benefit from those facilities, are the ones that pay for it, not previous generations.
The presentation also forecasted substantial growth in 2024, estimating hundreds of new housing and hotel units. Gale says it's exciting, but recognizes work needs to be done to ready the city for the expansion.
More roads means more times plowing roads and more pothole work on these same roads. It's that simple. Also, more people will demand more community services, recreation and cultural programs, athletic facilities, and more competition for that kind of thing.
Next up on the budget calendar is a public Q&A session 6 p.m. on Thursday at the Victoria Inn. Vasilios Bellows, TBT News.
OPP in this region continue to respond to more highway collisions. Police, fire, and EMS were called around 1 o'clock this afternoon to a two-vehicle crash on Highway 1117 at Twin City Crossroads. Fortunately, there were no serious injuries. Meanwhile, charges have now been laid by OPP against the driver of this Hydro-style commercial vehicle. The crash occurred at 3 o'clock yesterday morning on Highway 102 near Town Line Road. OPP say the driver, a 34-year-old Kaministiquia man, was taken to hospital with non-life-threatening injuries. He was subsequently charged with impaired driving. Charges were also laid against the driver of this transport. OPP say it crashed into the bush off Highway 11 just north of Nipigon yesterday afternoon. The 61-year-old driver from Brampton was charged with careless driving.
A CP rail freight train experienced a minor derailment this morning on Thunder Bay's south side. It happened at around 6 o'clock on the tracks next to Hardesty Street. CP officials say the incident occurred inside the rail yard and 5 or 6 rail cars went off the tracks. The cars involved were all empty and remained upright. A crane was brought in and all the cars were re-railed by this afternoon. There's no word on what caused the derailment.
Magnus Theatre is back with a new play on the main stage following a lengthy hiatus due to construction work on its building expansion.
Two Indians was a shortlisted finalist for the 2021 Governor General's Award for English Language Drama. The play follows two cousins who reunited in the city after a family tragedy. Jaden Billick has more.
You want to tell me why we're here? I see the gross alley. Very impressive. Hooray for Peace Smell. Can we go now?
While one cousin named Wynn stayed on the reservation and carries history of pieces left over from the tragedy, Roe left the reservation for the big city, bringing the reality of finding her way as an Indigenous person in an urban setting. The two finally meet in an alley 3 years after the incident within the family. This heartwarming show is about the strong Indigenous woman hoping to rekindle the relationship they once had after so many challenges and adversity split between them. Director Natalie Robitaille speaks more about the show.
It's all about the dynamic of finding that cousin that you spent your whole life with and that you were best friends, but then something happens and you don't speak for 3 years. And it's all about these two Indigenous women, one who stayed on the reservation and the other one who kind of fled to the city, if they can find each other again.
Moon is a new thing, like you never seen it before, like you gotta sit in a dirty alley and look at a full moon to feel Indian again.
The show features two talented actors, both passionate and honored to be able to tell the full story and really bring this piece to life on the Magna stage. Everyone involved hopes this production may strike conversation amongst audience members after the show, shedding light on real problems people are facing day to day. Cheyenne Scott is excited to make her Thunder Bay debut and touches upon her character and how she perceives the relatable family-driven story.
I am playing Ro, and she is such an interesting dynamic character because she's carrying a lot of past trauma and survivor's guilt. I feel really honored to carry that responsibility of storytelling, and I hope that it brings healing for people who are also watching this.
The show opens this Friday at 7:30 and will continue until February 10th. There will also be an additional Pay What You Want matinee show taking place January 28th at 2 p.m. Tickets are available through the Magnus Theatre website and/or box office. Jaden Billick, TBT News.
Thunder Bay sewer and water crews had to deal with an emergency waterline break in Westfort today, which affected a large number of homes. City crews could be seen on Frederica Street west of Neebing Avenue this afternoon. The roadway was closed to most traffic as workers were busy digging up the area around the broken water line. Water services had to be shut off to numerous homes and apartment complexes on that stretch of Frederica and will be turned back on once the issue is resolved. Crews on scene said the situation was under control and the water main should be fully repaired by later this evening.
Well, I guess if you do have to be out working outside in January, there are worse ways to do it.
Yes.
Haley, continue to have warm temperatures above seasonal and above the freezing mark.
Yes, very much above seasonal. Right now, seasonal for Thunder Bay is -8 degrees, but today we got to a high of 1 degree. It did come with gray, misty skies, however. Winds were calm, and when they did gust, they were gusting from the southwest to about 14 kilometers an hour. And the coldest part of our day was around 7 a.m. We were at -6, feeling like -9 with the wind chill, so even our low was above seasonal. As we look into our region currently, in Red Lake, they have a freezing drizzle advisory right now, and that advisory actually extends through most of the northwest in Kenora, Sioux Lookout, Dryden, and in Fort Frances. Fort Frances is just under cloudy skies at the moment, sitting at -1, but they do have that advisory for later on in this evening. As we look at Greenstone and Sault Ste. Marie, they're seeing light snows and some freezing drizzle as well. But they had a foggy day today, a little bit of mist as well, like we experienced in Thunder Bay. And Wawa and both Marathon are at -1 currently as well. As we look into this evening for Thunder Bay, we're expected to drop down to -4, feeling like -6 with the wind chill. It'll continue to be cloudy and that risk of freezing drizzle is still present. And as a bit of a takeaway as we head into the rest of the week, we can see that the sky will continue to be painted gray for the rest of the week. We might have a little pop-up of a mix of sun and cloud on Friday, but gray looking into Saturday and Sunday. And then we have warm temperatures continuing. And as we continue on in the news hour, Ryan, I will have more details on where our warmest spots will be.
Thanks, Haley. And I like that positive spin. It's not just gray out there, it's painted gray.
It's
add a little
gray.
artistic
Yeah, gray
flair.
is the style right now.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
It's in. And you know, I'm thinking, Haley, too, there's not much movement or change happening with the weather in the next little bit, and turning our attention to national news now, too. Not much movement for the Bank of Canada's key interest rate, which will remain the same at 5%. And we'll have more on that as your Wednesday News Hour continues.
Monetary policy is working to relieve price pressures, and we need to stay the course.